Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special
A
episode of Adobe Office Hours. Uh, Nick, today's a
very
little different.
special episode. I love that.
Yes, it's a
Let's,
very special episode. So, if you are watching this episode, regardless of the time that you are watching it, you're watching a replay. Congratulations, you made it. So at the time of airing, if you're watching this live at the premiere, I am in Columbus, Georgia at the Creative South Conference that's happening, hanging out with a bunch of creatives, awesome speakers, and leveling up my skills so that I can pass along those skills to you. And Nick, where are you at this particular moment?
I am probably in class right now, having a wonderful time with a critique with my students on the critique wall. So we are here to help you out, even though we're not here.
It's
And we
true.
don't do this that often. So, world's coming back. We got to be busy.
Well, it's coming back. And if you want to, we will be hanging out doing a little watch party. Nick and I will be popping in there. You guys can go hang out right down below, discord.gg/ACC. That's our Discord. And this is, a tunnel.
The tunnel's back.
Right?
Look
So,
out.
but if you click right here on Classroom Chat, there will be a whole bunch of people in there. I will probably be in there as well. And who knows? Maybe we'll have some other friends hop in there. Like, I don't know. I'm going to be hanging out with Christo. I'm going to be hanging out with Matthew and Cena. There'll be some people. So we might have
Get
some
them in there.
prizes. We'll see who's
There you go.
around, what's going on, who's backstage. We'll pop in and you can do some live commentary. Nick, let's leave like 10 seconds right here for live commentary real quick. Okay, cool. I need to make sure that I am in Discord at that moment.
Perfect. Yes.
If you weren't in Discord, you missed that moment. It was live.
Man.
All right.
That was incredible.
With that,
Magic
what are we
moments.
talking about
Magic
today,
moments.
Nick? It is going to
Yeah.
be a fun episode. I'm actually really excited for this. We just finished our logo boot camp, and we're moving on to some different topics. What are we talking about this week?
Yes. So it makes
Creative
perfect sense to be
briefs.
doing this right now, but we are showing you everything about building the perfect creative brief. But we're going to do it in two different ways. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to present it to you as the designer giving the questions and trying to get all that information out of a client. How
And
are you going to do it?
I
Andrew?
will present it from the other side. So I will be presenting from a client, or I like to refer Carol in accounting. For some reason, that's
Yes.
the name that I always think of, the non-creative. How do you work with creatives, right? I've worked in-house at a couple different places that there are a ton of non-creatives that are relying on me to get the job done. And so I've learned, how do I want to be communicated to, and what's the most effective communication strategy to talk to creative. So if you are the non-creative in your office, or you are looking to get more creative or to work with creatives, I'm going to be showing you what we want and how to give those creative briefs the other way. So it will be
Yes.
going from the client to the creative, which is going to be really fun. And we're going to do a lot of kind of just situational kind of talk today. We're going to walk you through a couple slides, a couple things here and there, but it's going to be a lot of talk. So Nick,
Yeah.
knowing that it's going to be a lot of talk today, we're going to be on this screen here with our faces. This is an
lot.
episode. Feel free to hop into voice chat. Feel free to make some pancakes and listen and take some notes. It's just going to be a really good episode of a lot of talk and a lot of kind of hangout. I got some music vibes in the background, so you can hang out with that as well. Nick, let's overview as we talk about this idea of creative briefs.
Yeah.
What is a creative brief from your side? And keep in mind, everyone, Nick's talking as a creative. I'm talking as the
Ooh.
agency.
We gotta play these roles. That's right.
I need a tie.
I like to think of it as like there's no way you can start, maybe even prior to your estimate, to your proposal, to putting together a budget of this thing. What exactly is the scope of services? And let's talk a lot about the creative. What are we going to be doing for you? And particularly, I'm using it more as I'm building a brand and building something from scratch for you, the client. So before we've even talked about color and typography and what icon might go in your logo or your branding, we want to talk about the essence. I love ethos. That's one of my favorite words to use for this. It's
ethos.
It encompasses everything, right? The feeling, the voice, the tone, the personality. You could talk, we've even gonna break it down into your brand archetype, feelings. Like, I think a lot of times when I ask, and you probably have realized this too, when you have students, a lot of times you ask them, like, describe a brand for me, and they might say like, oh, it's bright, or
Yep.
it's something like that, and then you always have to say, no, tell me more about how it makes you feel. Is it
Yes,
is
what's
it
the
trusting?
emotion?
Yeah, and it's always got to be, if you could really think about more emotional words that evoke a feeling or a vibe or something that kind of makes you feel, that's the best way to talk about and really build a solid creative brief that has magic keywords. Because guess what? That's what you're going to use when you start the design process and the creative is all that magic that you found. And then there's that linkage, right? Where when the client sees it now, they go, oh, you said, trusting, or you said versatile. I see how the logo is a little bit on the versatile side.
Yep.
And it's just check mark, check mark. Like let's just win this project and do it right.
I love that you had like the longest explanation ever, because from my side as the client, my idea of a creative brief is this.
Yes.
I need this thing. You make
Tomorrow.
this thing. I got this thing. Literal.
And can I get it tomorrow?
That's it. Yes. When can I have this thing? So a lot of times, as the non-creative working with a creative, I think that it's hard for us to see that as a big part, right? That we have been doing 90% of the work on an event, on some huge thing that is so passionate about us, that's playing to our strengths. And the creative part is not our strength. And so we think, oh, it's just another piece that needs to go in, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to not consider that as the non-creative and saying, hey, creative brief, I just need this thing. I have all this stuff going on. I have all of it handled. I just need you to do this little thing, right? I just need you to do this thing for me, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to possibly reposition that and how to communicate a little bit better with creatives and to have those conversations, because I have worked with hundreds of different companies, mostly in healthcare, real estate, nonprofit. These are people that are not at all keen in how to communicate with creatives. And so I have a lot of experience. So I'm going to try to expose that a little bit, but then help you. If you are Carol in accounting, we love that you're here. Welcome to Office Hours.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, because we will be covering how you can work better with the creatives in your life.
Yes.
But we're going to start from the creative side, because I think that there's a lot of creatives probably watching this show right now. So Nick, let's start from your side and let's start going. Where are we going? You will be the creative. I will be the client in this situation, right?
Yeah. Perfect. And I think it's probably good to say at the very beginning here, you are fishing, you are asking questions, but don't let it drive 100% of the process once you get into there. I think the great thing to look at is this is giving you all of the answers from them. And then what I do is I give them back the creative brief as a report from all the findings that we're going to go over right now. So what I like about that is, right, you give it back to them in a really unique visual way, and then they go, yes, sign off.
Yep.
We're good.
And I like to think of this process, and this is not the right mental way to think about it, but it is the right metaphor. I like to think of this process as finding ammo. So I am fishing and I'm searching for like putting ammo in my little Nerf belt, so that when we get later on in the process, we can say, hey, this piece right here, this ace that is up my sleeve, you gave it to me. This is your ace, and I'm going to go ahead and play it. And so and again, this is not the mindset to go in with, but that's what's going to happen is you're going to get those pieces that they'll come back later in the process and say, oh, but I want this. And you can say, well, in the brand questionnaire, you said that you actually wanted this, and that's what we've been working toward. And so keep an eye out for that. All right, Nick, I will shut up. You work your process. Let's hop in.
Let's go.
Where do we go first?
All right. And Andrew's going to be kind of like filling in the blanks as maybe the client in here as we ask some questions. So you ready to go through the form?
Yes. So yeah, what do we do first? I'm like, hey, Nick, I want to do a thing. Where do you send me? What's the intake
Perfect.
start like?
Oh, great. This is a great example. So before we can even talk, I think what I love to do is I send them something that is more of are we a perfect fit? That's my first questionnaire that goes out. Ooh. That just talks about the scope of the service, what kind of budget you're talking about, and we reiterate that at the end of my brand questionnaire as well. But that's the handshake, right? That's okay, I think we now know, and they're like, and we've got a brand ready to go. Then I say, perfect.
Yep. And if you don't get a response or an email from that, you're out. Like, peace out. Done. Yeah.
I've given you every olive branch to say, are we a good fit? I remember hearing someone saying it that way, and I thought that's a great way to say it, because we're each evaluating each other here. They're thinking, do you have all the goods? And I'm like, are you a real company with some budget? Because we're not doing this for $250, right?
All right. So Nick, I have a budget. I am a company. I love your work. We're a great fit. We've been having conversations. Where are you sending me next?
open your email because I just sent you a brand questionnaire. And
Ooh.
there are so many great ways you can use this for forms and a PDF that is a autofill. There's so many fun ways that you can actually send this out. I use this and it kind of just tracks everything from them. And it starts off, we build custom design logos made specifically for your business. We dive deep into your company's background to visually represent your company in the best way possible. And I think you got to walk them through the process, and it starts right here because they're going to get a lot from you in the upcoming months, right? And I like to start this off by saying, like, guys, we can't just do something without all this. So note that everything is required. At most every answer here is required.
And as your
so
client, I read this and I immediately am like, oh, they build custom design logos made specifically for my business. Wow. Oh, they're going to deep dive into the company's background and visually represent my company in the best possible solution. Oh, they're going to be in touch with an estimate proposal. Okay, cool. They're going to be initiative. And wow, they're excited to work with me, right? This wording is so perfect for the way that you're communicating to a client. And I'll talk about that from my side a little bit. But Nick, do you want to talk about why you're using these words here?
It's a confidence. You're in good hands. I'm not Allstate, but I am Longo. So let's give them yes, let's give them a little reassurance that because let's face it, I'm noticing most of these people have never done this before. Particularly, this is such a beginning stage of a new company. If they've done it before, they might have gone through someone that did not do it correctly. So you've got to give them as much training, as much love. This is like giving them that hug at the beginning and going, I got you. Yes. We're good, right? So we get into that, we get their email, but most importantly, the first question is, what is the official name of the product or company? And I know that just sounds so simple, but 9 times out of 10, maybe they don't have it yet. So that gives you a chance to add naming and possibly coming up with the brand name as a new part of your estimate, right?
And this is a fantastic question because if the answer is this, then it actually ends up being this.
$sign.
Like that's, you started talking, I was like, that's what it is. So if this doesn't get filled in, that's like, oh, I also can do this. And so I love the idea of creating that brief that you're asking, not only just getting information, but for you, you're building, what can I sell you on in this brief? Like, what is the brief that goes to you that also has, and I can whatever. Putting an and into a brief is always a great idea.
Yeah. And I like to think that confidence of everything you showed them prior to this allows them to feel trusting and going, oh, you could do names. And, technically I am not a copywriter, but I have named probably a good 50% of the work in the clients that I've worked for. So I'm building a little bit of that track record. So love the part that we can add that in there. Okay,
absolutely.
So the next part here is values. And when you think about values, the best way I love to say it is, what values does your brand hold true to them? Like, what would they stand on the top of the hill for, right? What would they stake their claim on? And I gave them a few examples. So here are a few examples to get you started. Now, a lot of times they will pull from this and they'll pull hungry, traditional, and balanced or something like that. But I do, when we're talking, and don't forget, I don't just send this to him. Sometimes I send it to him and I will do a quick walkthrough because I think it's important to tell them of some expectations. But I tell them to really use this as a guide because to me, this is the beginning stages of how I'm going to evaluate what the brand is. So some of my favorite are like adventurous, curious, playful, inventive, relentless. So it's starting to talk a little bit. Now, if he or she chooses relentless, then I know in a question down below, it better be a little rebellious. It better be a little bit of a rebel. You see what I mean?
And I love the way that you've sprinkled in specific words. So you've kept it pretty broad, right? Innovation, community, right? These very artistry, these generic kind of ethereal, but then you get into relentless, hungry, playful, adventurous,
all over the place, right?
Those start to give you more specifics to really get that in. And I love that it is approachable as the client. I'm loving this is approachable, but then also I can feel like I am communicating well, right? And literally down below us, there's a description that talks about how to communicate well. This is it, right? As the client, I'm saying, oh, we really want to be it like we want like innovation. Yeah, innovation's a word that we want. And I think the thing that separates us is like we're like punchy and rebellious and like relentless. Oh, relentless. We're relentless. That's the one that separates us.
Yeah.
And so I love
maybe
that
they
you give
need
it
to
an
hear
on-ramp.
that word before they can decide. Because let's face it, they might have never gone through this process. They're not creative. They know there's a word that exists, but no one's presented it in front of them.
Yes.
But it could spark that idea for them. And then keep in mind, as a backdoor kind of thing or a behind the scenes thing of this thing, I'm looking for the top 3. So they might give me 6. But what I will do is I'm going to narrow it down to 1 main and 2 supporting. That's always my mix when it comes to this. So they don't even know that's happening. I don't want them to think of priority at this point. I just want them to brain dump, put it on paper. Let's go.
So then next up, in plain English, what is your brand? What's happening here?
Yeah. So what do you offer? I want to know in the simplest terms what it is, right? What are you doing? And I think when you show it in this way, they will actually go, oh, wow, I've never thought of it that way. So in plain English, if it's not a compelling idea or there's nothing there, it might make them think twice about, oh, we've got to add a little bit more punch to our offering or something like that. But most of the times they have this. I think like one of the best ones I got in the past was like, they were doing an online ticket service thing, but they had a differentiation as opposed to some of their competitors. And how they laid it out was so perfect that I was like, there you go. That's what you offer in plain English. So I'm not expecting a big answer here, but at least enough for me to be like, okay, I know what you do. Let's start the conversation.
And this 100% is giving you like more of your brand voice than you could than you could ever imagine, right? You're almost tricking your client into telling you their brand voice. Because if you get something like this, right, that like they fill it out and they're like, we're so cool. You like ice cream? We got it. But with cheese, it's wild, right? This is copy. Like this copy writes itself. But if they come in and they're like, well, we're a formal whatever, you're like, okay, cool. I like am getting how much fun I can have with this. This is where you start to get a lot of that information about what you can do with this brand.
You're thinking about that scale now. Like you're like, oh, we went real formal and traditional, or we're going a little wild and funny and with this commentary, which is great. I love that.
All right. So
this next question is my favorite because this stumps them every once in a while. But what is the coolest thing about your brand? Now, I purposely put it here because I want to catch it from them very authentically and from very top of mind. Because down below, we're going to get into a lot more detail.
Okay.
It's cheese with ice cream.
Exactly. That's the project that I, as your client, I make.
It's frozen cheese.
It's frozen cheese. I make frozen cheese. That's who I'm going to be as the client. Okay, so then we move on, and now we start asking some specific questions about that client. And what are we trying to get here with core values?
Oh, this is a great one as well. I think this might have something to do with their backstory, why they started the business. They might be doing this for a cause or for a certain demographic or a certain problem that's trying to be solved. So again, I'm asking this pretty open-endedly, and I'm not giving them any examples on this one because I do want their own words in this in a lot of ways. And I think it helps us to kind of go, okay, we're going to get a lot of specifics, but we need some broad stroke kind of answers here as well.
Yep.
Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So core values, target customer. This is important, and I'll talk about this in my side. As the client, it's important for me to communicate this. And so I love that you're asking this, because if this is not a part of your conversation, like regardless of what happens, your project's going to fail, because you're going to be just like throwing a bunch of candy and like there's going to be one person standing in the street and it's all just going to like hit the street. I don't know why my brain went to like we're having a parade, but you get the metaphor, right? There's going to be one person in the street and behind you there's like a crowd of people and you throw a bunch of candy and it's all just like on the street because you're like, oh, neither of us talked about who the target person was. Like we're not saying this to anyone.
Yeah. And then again, it just starts to tell the story a little bit too. Who will we be trying to lure with this brand and with this everything that we're going to create? Next one is a good one as well. What role should your product or brand play in the customers' lives? And I think it doesn't have to have something so like it's going to solve the problem of blank, or it's going to be the most convenient resource for blank, right? It could be all of those things. But I love to just hear from them because I think a lot of times the core of why they even started this business, particularly over the last 2 years, so many new businesses have done this. They have some core value and some core meaning as to how is it going to change or affect or make a difference in someone's life. And Okay, so like if I was to ask you that, well, let's say you had a company in mind, is there any answer that might come to that for this question?
So like and this is dumb, but let's like run with the cheese ice cream people, the
Yeah,
frozen
sure.
cheese, right? So
What role
what
will that
role?
play in? Yeah.
So as the client, I would probably say like, hey, we are a novelty. Like we're a novelty that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
People are gonna try it once or twice, and they'll either absolutely love it or they'll hate it and they'll laugh at their
Great.
friends. We're not trying to be healthy. We're not trying to change the world. We are just a novelty that it's trying to make sales and make parties a little more fun,
There
right?
you go. There you go.
And
So love the ideas. A lot more fun. Something it's almost hit or miss, right? All these things start coming into mind, and I think you can already start thinking about what those visuals might be. But again, now I know this isn't serious, right? It's going to be a little bit fun, but I almost think just from that alone, I'm already thinking of two or three ideas that start visualizing from that idea.
right? Okay,
Yeah, it's
cool. So
very
then
cool.
we get in. This is what is going to happen in their lives. How we want to integrate into your customers.
Yep.
What's the point difference? This is interesting.
Yeah. So, what is your point of difference from all the competitors? You need this one so well defined, and a lot of times this has actually got a client to go, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't have something that is that game changer of a thing out in the marketplace. And that's a great sign. If someone doesn't have this, I might not like push them to actually work together just yet. I might put them back to the drawing boards and say that. But when they do have this, oh my gosh, this is your cornerstone. This is why you are on the market. This is how you will stand up next to those two or three other competitors that might be in the same marketplace.
Yep. And
So it's a great starting point.
from the client side, this is a great way to get the designer or creative that you're working with excited about the project that you're having them work on with you, right?
Yeah.
To say, hey, this is why I'm different. This is why I'm excited about this project. This is why this isn't going to be the same thing that you've done for 90 other people 100 other times, right?
Exactly.
That it's saying this is why it's different. And so if you are the client that is the non-creative working with the creative, this is so key to get the creative on your team, because I get so excited when someone comes to me and they're like, okay, so we want to do this thing, but I don't think anyone's done it this way before. We kind of want to like vibe in this zone and this zone. I'm like, yes. And let's do this, right? That gets them into the yes and that's where you want to be with the creative. Is you don't want them saying sure, you don't want them saying yes, you want them saying yes and. So if you hear that in conversation as you're trying to get into a project and brief them on what you need, if you get to a yes and, you're in, run with it. Like that's where you need to be with a creative.
Love that idea. So we get into the emotions that the brand should evoke. Again, we're getting back into now a little bit of the feelings. So this is where they get the current one we're on is pioneering, emotion, natural, but yet elevated. These were some of the words that we're working on. And I like it when they're a little bit of the yin and yang, where it's like natural, inspired. We're going to think of raw, kind of like rough edges and kind of weathered fonts, but then they want it elevated. And I love that it's a total opposite. And anytime you can get a contrast between color, size, feelings, iconic vibes and things, there's an instant like kind of connection to it. And I think that's what we try to strive for. And I love finding those things that are, when they say something like we're big, we want to go after stuff, but we're thinking small in our approach or our message. So again, anything you can find that's a little bit of an opposite in that branding, feeling, emotion thing, oh, it's gold. It's just gold.
And if you are the client going to the creative, stay away from generalities unless you, this is going to sound so, and I don't mean this in a passive aggressive way, unless you don't care about your project, you need to be specific, right? So Nick, if I come to you and I'm like, hey, so I'd love to tell like the story of Goldilocks and like, I want it to be like really happy and just like joyful and like just fun. And like, that's what I want, right? You're not going to care about that. You're like, everyone's done this a million times. The emotions are super broad. Like making people happy is like whatever. You put a sunset in a quote and you're fine, right? But if I came to you and I'm like, okay, Nick, so I kind of want to do the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but like I want it to be like really gritty, but
Yeah.
like also feel like it's just like off the rails and like electric and just like ramped up to 1,000, right? That to
Yeah.
you, right? As a creative, you got excited about that idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so using that emotion, and especially trying to explore complex emotions when
Yes.
communicating to the creative, it's important to not use generalities. Really try to get into something specific for a feeling that isn't just like, I don't know, like happy,
Yeah.
right? Jovial, exuberance, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
like literally look up a thesaurus and pick a word for something that means happy, because there's a lot of nuance, and a thesaurus will help you find what that nuance is that then we as the creatives can translate for you.
I call that like the Hamilton approach. It's like you took a story that had been done 1,000 times and you threw a whole new spin or overlay on it.
Yep.
And that's so inspiring and like the most copied thing probably ever
Yep.
in every shape of form of media and creativity, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Love it.
Okay, so then we get
Cool.
into look and feel.
Look and
What does
feel.
this mean?
This is where I can actually gather some visuals from them, what they have in mind. Now, again, this is used in a very opposite way when it comes to back of house. When they show me brands that they like and things like that, what I'm trying to get is maybe where we're going to go the opposite of sometimes. Like that might be it. Now, if they show me something that no competitor is doing, then we've got some originality, and I love that. And I think it's a great way to roll. Now, if it works with everything else that we get from this discovery and all these answers, great. There's a way. So this is a flexible one, but I have to start seeing one or two little visuals. And basically what we'll do too is they can obviously give me a few brands here, but what I also do is we share a Pinterest board together where they can pop in a bunch of visuals very easily by just doing web searches.
Oh yeah.
So you get to see a little of the of a little bit of like the how they might think they have an idea of what it looks like, but they'll show you one thing and then right next to it is it couldn't be more opposite of a design or a vibe, right?
Yep.
So it helps you to navigate through here and find the winners, find the ones that aren't being represented just yet by other brands.
Yep.
And then guess what? You have a little bit of a first step.
Yep. As the client,
Yeah.
it's not my responsibility to make those mood boards make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. If you are Carolyn Accounting, you don't need to think about that, right?
No.
My job is put the stuff on the mood board, and then you as the
Yeah.
creative are like, okay, what is the connection between
Yes.
like the Missy Elliott music video that you put here and like the McDonald's French fry? Like,
Yeah.
like why
Yeah.
are these on the same mood board, right? And those are questions and conversations that we can have because there's a reason that I put them there. That reason
Yeah.
may not connect to what the project is, but it's important to me as the client. And so as
Yeah.
the creative, you need to find out why is that important to you.
Yeah, yeah. I had one that was just great. It came back with this with a sample of something, and I within 5 minutes was able to show 20 brands that are doing this exact same look and feel, and that instantly got all of that off the board because as soon as they saw how many people were actually doing it, I wrote to them and I said, "Do we want to follow or do we want to lead?"
Ooh.
And sent them this slide.
Wow.
So, don't you just love getting that? Again, guys, this is all about building the confidence in you
Yep.
as the designer. You know,
Absolutely. All right. So now we're getting into
Yeah.
a little bit more of the weeds. What section are we
Yes.
entering here?
Yeah, so I asked the question of if the brand is a person, is it a male or female? And I think it's a great beginning point to see and understand. If they instantly know where this is geared to, great. But what I'm also finding is a lot of companies are wanting more of the gender neutral kind of vibe. And I love that challenge because I think it's going against all of the conditioning and the ideas of what branding should be. And when you look and see some of these, I was just on Dieline the other day, and there's all these incredible packagings. They were showing how people were very successful in this way. Why narrow it down to just one? Why not open it to all? And that is so much more interesting as a offering in a lot of ways. But on the flip side too, there are clients that have built a product that is specifically geared. So I get to know right there from the very beginning, and it's a great conversation to have with them to let them know that you're willing to do it for whoever it might be that they have in mind.
Yep. And as the client, I'm thinking that I just need a thing, right? I just need the thing made. And this makes me stop and think, oh, maybe I don't just need the thing, maybe I'm creating something more. Maybe it's an experience. Maybe it's something that people are going to interact with, right? And I
Yes.
love having these questions because it takes me away from like, well, a card doesn't have an age. Like this card that I
Yes.
need doesn't need to be young or old, or like this bottle design that I have, it's not high color. It's just a bottle, right? But I
Yes.
started to think, oh, I want it to communicate. I want it to interact with people's lives. I want them to get to know it. And so these questions are great to kind of pull the non-creative into the creative zone
Exactly.
to think, okay, let's personify this and figure out what is it? Like, who is
And
it?
all this makes up the person, the persona, the target from all this great element. So we get into some things: young, middle-aged, old. Obviously, that's a great one to ask. Blue collar or highbrow. That's a great one that a lot of people. You have to communicate totally different to these audiences, right? And it's good to know that. And sometimes they might go, "Oh, I'm a little hesitant to answer that. I don't want to define to one or the other." You could be blurring the lines a little bit sometimes if you do deliver right in between and don't gear towards one. I mean, it's based on the price a lot of times, right? I
Yep.
mean, like, let's face it, it's really the value. So then I hit them again with another big one with a lot of examples, and that is listing traits and the traits that apply to their brand. I'm now letting them free think a little bit because I'm giving them a lot of these different vibes, right? Warm, cold, romantic, idealistic, angry, stubborn, flirty, right? All these things. And one of these might trigger like, oh, we never thought about being an ambitious brand. Okay, I like that. That's a good starting point, right?
Reflective. That's a great word.
Exactly. Yeah, love
Feral.
this.
Oh, Nick, these are great.
Aren't these great words?
These
I love these.
and it's great here to give options, right? As
Mm-hmm.
the client, I love that there are options that I can just pick one of these and be like, oh
Yes.
yeah, okay, pragmatic, feral, and dedicated. Those are my words, right? I don't have to think
Yes.
of anything or come up with it. I'm like, I don't know, and I'm not the creative one. Like, you're supposed to be the creative one. Figure it out, right? That you've
Just pick a word.
Yeah, you've done that work for me. Like, you have been the creative for me, so that I don't have to think about it. I can just kind of pick the word.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
So next one, where do you fall in line on this scale? And it's like, this is that square we used a few weeks ago. It makes them think a little bit. And I love the idea that adding the scale is now no longer a question or an answer. It's just pick a bubble.
Yep.
So where are you? Are you classical? Are you modern? Are you whimsical? Or are you serious, right? And it makes them think a little bit. They're like, can we be a little fun with this one? And when they know they can, they know that immediately.
Yep.
If they did one for like this cryptocurrency keychain password drive, it was so serious, right? It could not be whimsical. It's about security. It was like holding your password and whatever value you have in yours. Like, so again, it had to be completely serious.
Yep.
No whimsical value and super contemporary.
Which the key to doing this, there's a very core thing that you did with these. Never do a scale of 10. Never do a scale of 3.
Oh, too many.
Always
right?
do 5. Do 5, scale of 5, because it is an odd number, which means
Yes.
that they have to pick an in between.
Yes.
And then it allows you to understand is either a lot, a little bit, not really, right?
Yeah.
A scale to 10 or even like a large slider of like 100% or whatever, it's not super helpful because it becomes kind of this ethereal, like, I don't know, like kind of this zone. But this makes them
you
pick.
want a little
like,
more definition.
would you like stake a claim here, or are you just like standing, or do you not care? It really makes them make that pick. So always 5 scales. Like, that's my advice across the board. Always scales of 5.
I love that. So my next one gets into a real favorite one, and most of them have never seen the brand archetypes, and I only list out the top, I believe, 12 here. But this makes them think more than anything, and they get so excited when they get to tell me, "We've picked an archetype. We've picked an archetype." They love it. So I give them just the briefest definition. They also can give them a link that has a little bit more explanation to it. But this, boy, if you don't solve it all with this, to me, this has been the game changer. I love it when they're like, "We're a hero brand. We are a hero to our customer." They want to prove themselves. And imagine what the branding is going to look like, right? It's going to look rugged and cool and like, just so damn confident. The ruler, right? That's like the Rolexes of the world, right? The Explorer is like REI. It's like, Discovery Channel, all of these things.
Yep.
The Sage becomes that's a great one because it's this always seeking the truth. And a lot of food and brands in that zone that I get to work with love that idea. But like, do any of these kind of like surprise you as like, oh, that would be a great one, or I know a brand just like that?
To me, I always think of like if we're talking about things like the ruler wants absolute power, right? And this is a really weird example, but for some reason I think about like some of the pop stars that have really core brands like Beyonce,
Yes.
right? That it's
Yeah.
like it isn't just to be famous, right? It isn't like seeking truth. It isn't like, oh, I'm just going to be happy with I'm like, Beyonce is an all-encompassing absolute power. And I don't think that like they shy away from that. Like that's the brand is like Beyonce.
Doesn't she use Queen a lot as her kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And do you think that's by like just chance?
Hell
no.
And I love that like there is that content. And again, I love looking at music eras because it's all just branding. Like these are regular people like you and me that just have been branded to filth. And so like even looking, right, and we're just going to stay in music, looking at like Taylor Swift, right? Taylor Swift she goes through like eras, right? Where she's like in the woods, right? And she's the sage. She's seeking truth, right?
You think she changes?
Oh yeah, so every time she was so she put out her Lover album. She's innocent. I just want to be happy, right? And then Outlaw, she puts out Reputation. Like I'm here to fight everybody, right? And each time the tour's different, the outfits are different, the CD's different. It's all encompassing. And so I love these archetypes because you could look through each of these and think of a musician at a certain point. That's all they're doing is regular people that are branded as an archetype, and we love it. That's how it works.
That's great. So apparently Taylor Swift has taken the brand archetypes thing completely out of mine. I love it.
Can we please just make a brand archetypes that's just like which Taylor are you? That's like which Taylor is your business, and it's just pictures of eras of Taylor.
I gotta admit, you're right. Like I don't think I can name a lot of other musicians in that world that have made that much of a shift to a whole other thing. Like my first person that came to mind was Madonna, but then I think she's basically been more the rebel or the, in a way. And I was trying to think, God, who else would like Michael Jackson maybe at a certain point in his career?
Even
crazy,
even
dude.
Gaga
That's
bounced around, but has found her zone where it's like, yeah, we get it, we know your brand, but
yes,
Taylor's like, cool, my brand is whatever I want it to be, which I love.
The ever-changing archetype. Wow, good.
Okay,
good
so
call.
Continuing this, that was a side tangent that I love talking about archetypes. We could talk about that all day. Oh, and there is a great resource to find your creative type. Just Google Adobe Find Your Creative Type.
Yeah.
And there is a great way to find out how you work as a creative, and it's super helpful to like be able to communicate that to clients.
So good. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect, man.
Let's keep going here.
We'll sum it up. Yeah. So how would you want your customer to describe your brand, product, or location when recommending it to a friend? I love this thing because too, it makes them start thinking in the future. That's like the crystal ball, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, they're like, I would love them to say it's friendly, it's warm, it's caring, it's nurturing, whatever it might be, right? So now all of a sudden, this tells me what to look for in the answers up above. When they give me 6, this tells me how we're going to narrow it down to that top 1. So I love that question. Then we go into a good one where, boy, they get stumped. And that is, if your logo can represent one thing only, what would it be?
I love that.
And do you see now, all of a sudden, I'm trying to be like this funnel. I'm like funneling it down to that very last one where it's like, now they have to pick, and they're like, really just one thing? And because I tell them your logo and your brand should only do 1 or 2, possibly 2 things. Anything more like that, it's just getting blurry. It's too much of a message.
Yep.
Let's narrow it down. And it makes them, commit to one. But then it gets into now it's just those last ones that are a little bit more about the initial project. Is there anything else you'd like us to put an estimate for? Because I want to ask immediately. Then I ask about budget, and then I ask about time frame and deadline for that. And then do you have any other additional comments, requests, or notes that they can add at the end? So you get quite a lot, and I did this purposely because it will weed out someone who is not serious. Even if they say they have the budget, if they won't take the time to do this with me, there's just there's no next step.
And I love that it is longer because it definitely says, hey, if you don't fill this out, you're obviously not interested, because if I can't get this from you, we're going to need to be a team here. And if I can't get this from you, then like we're done. Like it's just
exactly.
over. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the rest of my side, and then we can go to like what you do with that. So this is a great transition because it's really important. And I love that you as the creative, right, are pulling me through that form, right?
Great.
That there's all this establishing of like trust and all that stuff or whatever, because we are going to switch over. I am going to be Carol from accounting. If you are that person in your office, in your workspace, in your school, wherever that you get to work with creatives and you're trying to learn how to work with them better, I'm about to tell you all the things that I know. And
Perfect.
As a disclaimer, I have learned all of these things, literally all of them, from having the greatest project manager in the history of the universe. So her name is Bethany Cordes, and we've worked together for like 15 years. But she was in like HR, like she was the non-creative, the least creative. And so I learned from her and had the experiences with her. And then she switched over to be my project manager and now become the creative. And so she's helped me unpack.
Oh, wow.
Here's how the clients are wanting to engage with you. Here's what clients want. Here's what I would want as a person in HR asking for a creative to help me. So
that's great.
I'm going to give you the knowledge that I've gleaned from Bethany. That's all this is.
Nice.
Y'all can find her online and say, thanks, Bethany.
Shout out to Bethany.
Shout out to Bethany. All right. So here is the number one thing on both sides. Okay. So if you are Carol in accounting, we are the client. There is no you or them. There is only we or us, right? And Nick, I think this is the perfect segue because you use that verbiage a little bit in your intro as well to that form.
We.
Yeah, you used we, and it very much is this mindset that you go into it with, right? And we've talked about this a couple times on the show that you don't want it to be about the creative and you don't want it to be about the client. You want it to be about the goal. You want it to be about the project, right? And so coming into it, I think that it is hard as the non-creative, as the client to come in and say, hey, I have this thing. I have been doing all of this work. You need to do this for me, right? That I need you to do this piece of the project so that I can do whatever, right? And so if you are that person who is the client coming into talking to a creative, try to just reframe that conversation, right? So Nick, let's say that you're the creative and say, hey, Nick, I have been working on this project. I'm doing this this big event this weekend, and I really need some promotions. So if you can handle those promotions for me, that'd be great. And then if you can just take care of it, that'd be awesome, right? How do you feel as a creative?
Pretty uninspired. Nowhere to go. What's my first step?
Right.
When is this event? What is the name?
Yes. So
where do you want me to
if
start?
I come to you and I say, okay, Nick, so we've been working on this event and we really want to like engage with the community a little bit more. And we'd love for you to help us kind of figure out how we can promote it. We think that we might need some flyers or like some posters, but we'd love to work with you to like try to get more people there.
Perfect.
Are you more excited about it?
We're right on the right start. Yes.
Right. And you're already thinking of like, oh, maybe posters aren't a good idea. Maybe we should do this, right? That you're already in that yes and. That's the key to starting those conversations is bringing them into the fold to say, hey, we are doing this together. Here is the goal that we are trying to accomplish. Because as much as I might have a vision for it as the client, you might be able to translate to the goal better than I can, right? And that's really hard to do. But coming into it and saying, okay, you are the expert in this zone. I have thoughts that I'd love for you to consider, but I respect you and want to work with you so that we both can hit this goal and both have success at the end, right?
As the welcome mat, the open door,
that's
the whole shebang.
The amount of conversations and projects that I would have done so much better on and had so much more fun and had a better result on if conversations would have started with this verbiage.
Yeah.
Countless. Like there were so many things that clients would come to me as the creative. They'd be like, hey, we need to do this. And I'd be like, whatever. And sure. Right. If you ever hear a creative say, sure, you have lost. You have lost that conversation because for me as a creative, I say sure. That means I don't care. I want you to tell me what to do. And I am just your hammer to hit the nail. Tell me where the nail is. I'll hit it. And then you can go away. Right. You don't ever want to hear sure. You want to hear yes and, right. You want to continue that conversation. So here's some ways to do that conversation as the client and non-creative coming to work with the creative, right? And I've said it and I broke it down into an acronym, and y'all are going to love this. Hopefully you can take a screenshot. And I was telling Nick, here's the deal, guys. I've been doing this for a long time. I just formalized it. So if you're like, ooh, the team method. No, I literally made this slide like less than an hour ago, but this is the process and it is the knowledge. I just tried to make it a little more digestible. So we're going to use the team method.
Yay.
If we're coming in as the client, here's the team method. And I think, and this is kind of mean. This is maybe an assumption I shouldn't make, but I feel like if I'm talking to the non-creative that is coming to creatives, I think that acronyms are really helpful sometimes for people that are in a little more of a structured role that aren't thinking outside the box. It's, hey, here's a checklist, right? Here's a checklist. Here's an acronym you can remember, 4 letters. Make sure you hit these points when you're going to talk to your creative, right?
Yeah, it might even sound a little corny, but it's so memorable. You can use it jokingly in the next few phases.
Yep.
We're a team, remember?
Exactly.
You know,
So,
you could be, and I think sometimes doesn't that just show commitment and you're in?
Yes,
on both sides. Like,
even if it sounds dumb, even if it feels dumb, if it gets you to a better place, who cares? Who cares?
Exactly.
Be a little weird.
Exactly.
So we are going to work as a team with our creative. And the first thing is the T. And T is going to be to tell them. So we are going to tell them who, what, where, when, how, right? And this is going to be in contrast to another point that I'm about to make, but it's the way that we do it. So we do need to tell them. We do need to ask them. So we should tell, but don't tell. So I'll get there in a second, but we need to tell them who, what, where, and why. And what we're doing here is just giving context, right? And Nick, when you're working as a creative, let's say I come to you and I'm like, hey, really need some flyers. We are going to be doing this event. It's going to be like late night and we need to promote it. It's going to be like a 9 p.m. kind of thing. So can you whip up some flyers for us?
Absolutely. I'd love to hear more about it. Can you tell me a little bit more about who is coming, what the event's all about, where it's going to be? I need some content.
So there's a lot missing there, right? There's a lot that's kind of just, I know all of the context. And I'm just thinking, oh, Nick is the piece that fits in this missing piece of context. But Nick doesn't have any of the context. So if I come to you and say, hey, Nick, we're doing a concert. It's going to be at 9 p.m. tonight. We're thinking about doing some posters. We're having some bands play. I'll send over the full lineup so that you have it. And it's going to be like a concert style. It's going to be down in the basement room. We're going to be having some people down there, which will be cool. Again, 9 p.m. It's going to be April 15th. I think that I want to do posters. I want to do something that we can put up or like give people that they can see kind of in passing. And it's going to kind of exist in the space. We're not going to go and put it out in the community at all. So we can really play around with the space that we have here at the organization. If you have any ideas, that'd be great.
Perfect. I think I'm probably going to go into the next letter at that point.
Ooh, yes.
I want to establish some goals, baby.
Yeah, so from there, we are going to give them context. And I think giving them context for where is a really, really big thing that we overlook, right? Oh, I'm making this thing for you. Great. Where's it going to go? Is it living on social media? Is it for TikTok? Is it for Instagram? Is it a Facebook ad? Right? Where is it going to go? Always communicate that information, which doesn't seem relevant to the creative. It is very relevant.
One thing that scared me was you said the event is tonight. So I'd probably ask, are you sure? I think everything's going to be digital.
Yes. Okay. So then we're moving into the E, establish goals. And this is where I come to you with my goals. Now, not my needs, my goals, right? And so it's a little different. But yes, so deliverables is, hey, these are the things that I'd love to get done, right? And deliverables can either be like assets, like I need flyers and pamphlets, or it can be a goal. Like, hey, I need to reach a bunch of people. We need to collect RSVPs and we need to increase donations, right? Those are the deliverables. Those are the goals, right? I'm going to establish, we're talking to a target audience. Like we're doing this event. We're trying to get people in here that are like young families to kind of get more engaged. And then the purpose of this event is to try to start to build some brand loyalty, right? Saying those things and not just, hey, I need XYZ, saying, hey, I need XYZ because we're trying to reach these kinds of people. And we're trying to do this with those kinds of people. We're doing it at this location in this way, right? That I'm giving Nick the puzzle pieces and basically asking, can you put this puzzle together in a different way? Maybe you have a different perspective, right?
Or maybe just in any way, right?
Yes.
It's scattered, it's here. What's the priority? How do we weigh the options? What's the number one thing it should be? We're basically going back to the questions we just looked at.
Yep, absolutely. And next up, in straight contrast to where we started, ask, don't tell, right? And so this is referring to that mid conversation, right? So we have to tell them something. We have to give them context, right? We're telling them context, but we're not telling them to do anything, right? Then we've established our goals, and now we're asking questions, right? How can we make this happen? What else do you need from me? Is this deadline attainable, right? So these are the conversations that as the client, a lot of times on the creative side, I would hear this as a statement, right?
Yes.
Hey, we need these. We need to have it by next week. Here's the information that I have. I'll talk to you when it's done, right? And don't do that. Give them the information, tell them that context, right? Establish the goals, and then turn the end of that conversation into a question to say, hey, Nick, now that you have all of this information that I've given you, how can we make this happen? What else do you need from me? And what's your timeline look for this? I would love for the timeline to hit in the next couple of weeks. Is that attainable for you?
Perfect. And then that gives me everything to fire back and answer. And I can say, now that you've given me all this content, let me put together the proposal, the feedback, and I'll come back to you as soon as possible. This is definitely attainable.
Yep. And most of the time, if as the creative, I get to this point and I tell them, like, let me think about it a little while and I'll follow up, that means you haven't done a good job at communicating to me, and I need to figure out what you want. I feel like I don't know if they're going to be able to work with me. And so I'm like, man, I have to do the digging work to basically say, okay, here's X, Y, and Z, here's X, Y, and Z, here's X. And I start to like build walls. But when it starts to be, hey, when can we make this happen? Oh man, my next couple weeks are a little crazy. I think maybe we could get 3 or 4 weeks out if that could work for you. Oh, we'd love to have it a little bit sooner. Like, okay, cool. Let me see if I can move something around, right? It becomes a conversation, and that's what you want, the conversation.
Yeah.
And
then, it never goes completely the way it should be from that ask area. There's always the making accommodations that I think might happen a day or two later or maybe further down the road. But again, it's just being flexible. It's being open to that. And maybe even just having the conversation that it might happen. That's such a good thing.
Absolutely.
You
know? Yep. And especially, oh my goodness, it is so great in this next point. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but the M is make accommodations, right?
Yeah.
And here is the number one thing that I want to hear from my client as a creative. I want to hear you say, things might change, and so we're open to maybe flexing on the deadline as things shift and change, right? If I, as the client, don't have everything locked in, I can't have the expectation of you to lock everything in, right?
Exactly.
And so finishing that by making accommodations. Let's see if we can move this deadline a little bit later for you so that we can get it done. We need to get you info, right? We talked about the event. Cool. I know after this call, I need to send you the dates, the times, all of the info. And this is something that I learned from Bethany, claps to Bethany, is we would not start a project until every single thing was submitted, until I had every piece of context. I am not even looking at that project. And Bethany would keep it from me until everything was in. And so that is the accommodations of, hey, I know I have not gotten you this thing, so you cannot start, right? If I'm coming in as a client and say, Nick, I need to get started on this, but I'll get you stuff as you go, right? You already feel disrespected. It's hard for you to work. We need to make those accommodations. You don't need to start on this because we still have work to do. Once we're done having work, then we can work as a team, and I'll give that to you so that we can figure out what those accommodations need to be. So use the team method, y'all.
Anytime you can eliminate those kind of like unpredictable kind of things, if you've not given them the full download, the inconsistent information, all the things, that expectation that it can be done without some deliverables, you got to have that conversation on both sides.
Yep.
all the time. I think that's probably one area where I'm pushing to do a little bit more, because you get a little burned when you haven't talked about that, and then they're thinking, "Oh, don't you have everything?" And just today, I think I had to write back to a client just saying, "Wait, you still have a few things that aren't checked off from the
Balls in your court, bud.
deliverables
Yeah.
list." Yeah, it's like, and he was like, "Oh, that's right." And he was all set to send it to like the translator and everything stuff. So again, reality plays a huge role in this thing. You can't just pull a rabbit out of a hat every time.
Yep.
You know.
So that's it for this episode. This was a great episode. I really enjoyed this. Hopefully, if you're non-creative working with creatives, you understand a little bit better how to communicate. And if you are a creative, hopefully you understand how to intake, how to have those conversations, how to create that creative brief for your client. Nick, where can people get connected?
Yes, right there at our Discord, guys. We'll be here. You probably saw us pop in a few times to kind of talk a little bit here. I'm gonna provide a fun little quick, easy PDF that is a great beginning guide to starting a creative brief. Even if you're working on something for yourself, it's a great one for your own personal branding. But anytime you might be working with a small client, it'll help you out right from the very beginning.
Yep. So go hop into Discord right now. We'll be in there hanging out for the next few minutes, and we will see you next week for a very special episode of Adobe Office Hours. It'll be a surprise. We'll talk about it in Discord. Bye.
Bye, guys.